I think we're ready to go, Julie. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody to our second in our 2023 series of In Conversation With events, organised by the GDST alumni team, bringing together alum, current students, parents and other GDST family members to showcase the achievements of a wide range of GDST alumni. We're so very honoured today to have Susie Allen-Sierpinski with us today, Nottingham Girls High School alumna and finalist for the GDST's 2022 Alum of the Year Award. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a bit about Susie. Susie is a mission integration engineer for NASA. She's currently working on the lunar mission program Artemis, named after the twin sister of Apollo. This program aims to put the next man and the first woman on the moon. At the moon, NASA and its partners will gain the experience necessary to mount a historic human mission to Mars. Susie's role involves supporting the Gateway Deep Space Logistics Project as the lead mission integration engineer for the Artemis 4 logistics module mission, currently based at the Kennedy Space Center, which is home to the Gateway Deep Space Logistics Project. Susie works on the logistics module, which will transport food, water, cargo, and equipment to the moon, as well as other components of the Gateway. Susie joined NGHS in the infant and junior school and left at the end of her studies in the senior school in the year 2000. She then completed her BS Aerospace Engineering degree at the Florida Institute of Technology, followed by her MSA in Applied Aviation Safety, before going on to complete her MS in Industrial and Systems Engineering at the University of Florida. Susie works in the international space industry, in which the number of women employed represents just 20 to 22% of the workforce, which incredibly is the same number of women as 30 years ago. Women face obstacles to enter space-related careers and contribute to discussions ending this disparity. Within NASA, a third of the workforce is female, and within this, only 28% are in senior executive positions, and only 16% in senior scientific positions. So welcome, Susie. Got a list of questions that lots of people have got lots of things they want to ask you. So I'm going to work through a series of questions, and I know everybody's really excited to hear so much about you. So Susie, my first question really is, I'm the head here at Nottingham Girls High School. And so the first question I really would like to know is, let's go back to the start of your story. Can you tell us a little bit about your school days here at Nottingham and what part, if any, did the school play in nurturing your interest in space?
So I always look back fondly on my time at the school, and I had a great time touring and speaking to some of the students last year when I visited, and it brought back some really great memories. And I was really, really excited to hear that the junior school now has an engineering club, because that was certainly something that we didn't have a number of years ago. And definitely the education I received at Nottingham made sure that I was ready for not only being in such a challenging field, and obviously going to university and all of that, but also that I was kind of ready for the adventure to move to a new country, meet new people, make new friends, and all the things that went along with that. Nottingham didn't kick
sorry,
off
Susie, carry on.
I would say Nottingham didn't kick off my love of space. That came from a family holiday to Florida when I was 4. We went to the Space Center, and I saw the guy walking around in the astronaut suit, and I said to my mum, that's what I want to do. And when a 4-year-old says that's what I want to do when I grow up, you think, oh, okay, you'll change your mind in a few months. But I stuck with it, and I think the staff and certainly Mrs. Bowering, Mrs. Reese and Miss Evans were always very encouraging, and I think that was one of the best things that helped nurture my love of space. And I think I spent a lot of time in the library, sitting in the corner in the beanbags, finding anything I could in the library about space and reading. So
amazing. And it's nice to hear that actually is the ethos we would have today, that actually whatever a child's love and what they want to do, we hope we nurture that. And it's so exciting to hear that, at 4 you said that, but you've gone on to do it. What kind of role models, Susie, did you have growing up? Who were they? Who were the people who inspired you?
So I think the easiest one is Susan Helms. She was an astronaut. She was a crew member of 5 shuttle missions. She lived on the space station for 5 months, and she, I think, still holds the world record for the longest spacewalk. She was a friend of a family friend, and that family friend asked her to send me an autograph or a picture, and she sent me this massive packet of stuff with all this NASA information, and that just meant I could read more, which was great. But she signed it, and I started looking into her background, and she did aerospace engineering, and she was a pilot, and so that was when I really started to think, well, maybe I should look into engineering. I like putting things together and taking things apart, and hopefully they all go back together the same way. But her career really was what led me to get my pilot's license and pursue engineering. So she's probably my first one that I would say. And then the other was my mum and dad. They always supported me in my crazy dream to be an astronaut. And obviously I didn't get there, but they pushed me to be better, and they always set a good example for me. And they worked hard, and I didn't have the most conventional childhood. My mum and dad had a pub. So, they worked long hours, but they always made time for us as a family, and made time for me, and supported me in any way they could. So I think they're probably my best role models.
Lovely, wonderful. We talked in the intro about women being underrepresented in the space industry, but also engineering. Have you faced difficulties in pursuing this role, and any advice you have to girls listening about how they can break down those barriers?
So I think I've been very lucky in the fact that I can't point to one thing and say I really had trouble getting this job because I was a woman, and I think that comes from the experience I've gained over the years, and my CV always has positioned me very well. I think the hardest thing was going to university, and it wasn't common for women in 2000 to be in aerospace engineering. I think in my introduction to aerospace engineering class, there was 4 women and maybe 30 men. And when we got to the commencement ceremony, there was 3 women and 16 men. So I think the hardest thing is taking that first step and really deciding that's what you want to do. And so with going through all the classes, I think you learn to work as a team, and becoming that team member and working together is one of the best things that you can learn as an engineer, because it's something you're going to do in your job on an everyday basis. And so working with different people really allowed me to expand and grow my knowledge. Yeah. And so the biggest difficulty for me actually working for NASA was my immigration status. So here in the US, in order to work for NASA, you need to be either a permanent resident or a US citizen. And when I graduated from university with my bachelor's degree, I didn't have either of those. So it was an adventure, and getting my permanent residency and getting all that paperwork done. So in the meantime, I looked around at what else I could do. So I did an internship, and I went back to school and did my master's degree and worked finding things that I really enjoyed doing. And so that was, I think my advice would be, find something you love. And if you love it, you're going to work harder, and you're going to do it well, and you're going to find a way no matter what.
Absolutely. I think that's a really strong message. It sounds like the sort of thing I say to the students every day, isn't it? You find what you love, and by doing and working hard at that, it will open doors, and you'll get places. And amazing inspiration to hear that, you couldn't get something because of a certain obstacle, but it didn't stop you, and you found a way around that, which I think is really important.
And I'm really encouraged to see how many women there are at NASA. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. They're not high, but over the last 20 years, we've really started to see, especially in leadership, more and more women. And the number of women in the room, I spend a lot of time in meetings about various things, and there's more women in those meetings, which is great. I used to be one of maybe 1 or 2 in a meeting, and now there's a lot more of us. So I think that's great. And we have our first female launch director. Our NASA deputy administrator is Pam Melroy, and she's an astronaut and an Air Force officer. So we're getting there. I think it's slow, but we're making progress for sure.
Yeah, and amazing. And once girls can see women are doing it and they're represented in the role modeling, you can see representation, it will really help. So I know your job is so exciting, and there's probably lots you do, but what would you say is the best part of your job? Describe to us what the best bits are.
I think the best bit to me is the people that I get to work with. I work with an amazing team of really, really smart people. And often I feel like I maybe shouldn't be in the room because maybe I'm not so smart, but then you think, well, no, I bring a different thing to this meeting, and everybody brings something unique. And so I think that the fact that we're working towards this humanity changing goal of getting a space station into lunar orbit, and we're trying to get people to Mars, that's just amazing. And I'm really fortunate that I get to work with teams from all over the world. The Gateway program, we have international partners, and they're going to provide very important contributions to the space station. And so that's going to be our advanced external robotics, additional habitation refueling capabilities. So I work with engineers, scientists, astronauts from across the US, the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency, and the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA.
Wow.
So I think that's probably the best part. And then I think the other part of it is just seeing the vision come to reality. You know, we've been working on the space station, the Gateway, for a few years now, and we're using it as part of the Artemis program. So we've got the SLS rocket, and there's lots of different pieces coming together, the lunar landings, and it's just incredible that we can all work together and get to the moon, and then see how it goes from there.
Huge, isn't it? It's just mind-blowing. Do you think humans will ever live in space? Is that what you think we'll get to that point?
Well, so we already live in space. We've had 23 years now of continuous human presence on the International Space Station. So that's low Earth orbit. I think we just started Expedition 69 back in March. We have 7 crew members on board. And so we've learned so much from living on the space station, how to grow crops. I think we just harvested some tomatoes, and
wow.
I know the astronauts were eager to try it. And it's just the applications to what we have here on Earth, you know, things that you use every day, your cell phone, your battery operated tools, where you really, there's a lot of things that I think people don't realize that come from the space program and the investments that we've made. And so Gateway is going to be our first space station out of near Earth. So we're going to be in a near rectilinear halo orbit, and that's going to give us access to the lunar surface while giving us fuel efficiency. And so again, we're going to learn more about how to live in space, but not close to Earth. So there's different challenges with radiation and things like that. And then getting to Mars, you know, I think eventually we will have some presence on Mars, and I think that's going to be amazing.
Wow, that is amazing. What's been the greatest challenge of your career so far, Susie, and how have you overcome those challenges?
This is a tough one. I think the most challenging part of my career has been change. So change is inevitable. It comes with everything you do, but figuring out how to roll with those changes isn't easy, but I think being open to new challenges and opportunities, that's really how I overcame the changes. So I think moving to America was probably the easiest change of all, surprisingly. It just seemed like the logical next step in the plan. So, but then when the space shuttle program ended, that was really hard. I never really thought it would end, because the space shuttle had always been flying in my lifetime. And then all of a sudden there were thousands of people that had supported the program that were suddenly trying to figure out what was next. Fortunately for me, the relationships I developed over the years, the friendships and the people I worked with, opened doors for me that I wouldn't have thought of or expected. And they offered me opportunities with the FAA's Commercial Space Office and also with the US Navy. And I'd considered working for the FAA, but I'd never really thought about working for the Navy. That wasn't something in my plan, but it was still working with airplanes. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And I got to work on the EA-18G, the Growler, the electronic version of the F-18 fighter. And so I think being open to that opportunity and saying yes, and really looking around and seeing what else you can do, really, it grows you as a person, and eventually it got me back to NASA and really what I wanted to do.
Amazing. What's your proudest achievement? You talk about a lot of things that you've done. What would you say, what are you most proud of?
I think probably working for NASA is my proudest achievement. Working on the space shuttle program, I have been very lucky that I got to do some really neat things. I got to be a member of the final inspection team, which they're the last group of people other than the astronauts and the closeout crew, and they inspect the whole vehicle top to bottom. We're looking for ice and debris, and so that was an opportunity that very few women got to do, and very few people generally. So that was pretty neat. I got to be on the runway to greet the crew and be the first ones to approach the orbiter once it landed. That was pretty cool. And then I think just my son, my family, is another achievement, you know, just in the grand scheme of things.
And you've managed successfully, clearly, to manage, you know, high flying career, really important role, and having a child. You've doing all of that.
It's not always easy.
No.
I think there's some guilt that comes along with that when you leave the workday and you think, oh, I've got to leave this meeting a bit early because I've got to go and pick my son up to get him to football practice. It's sometimes
but you're thriving. You're doing that. It's amazing. Being selfish and going back to your NGHS days and GDST days, you talked about that love of space, I suppose, coming from not necessarily in school, but the wider. But do you think that the school prepared you in other ways for the career that you've now got? And, you know, anything from your time at school that you really remember put you in good stead for the future?
I think, and we kind of touched on it before, trying to think how to put it. It's such a unique community of young women that are taught to work hard, and really, but I think it taught me to believe in myself. No one ever told me no. No one ever said you can't do that. I think there were some expectations of engineering as a boiler suit and greasy, messy job, but I think as we've gotten smarter about what engineers really do, it's a little bit different. But no one told me no. And so I just never even thought that, no, it's not a possibility. So I just went out and did it. I mean, there were some teachers that said, you need to be a bit better at math. And I'm very appreciative of that, because I did need to be better at math and really gave me some things to focus on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was such a good experience. I made such good friends.
I was going to say, are you in touch still with friends from school? Do you keep in touch?
I am, and I actually see my oldest friend, one of my very oldest friends, in the chat. She just popped in and said hi. But we have kept in touch all these years. We meet up. When I was living up in DC, she was in DC, and we met up for dinner, and it was like no time had passed at all. And I think those friendships and just the relationships that you build teach you how to do life.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when alum come back to the school that there's bonds between the alum from GDST schools that is just so strong, and we see it all the time. The friendships that are made do last a lifetime. It is extraordinary, really extraordinary.
And I hadn't seen, we visited last year, and I got to see a couple of friends that I haven't seen in almost 20 years. And it's just amazing. You just pick up and you carry on, and it's like incredible.
Yeah. A question from our head girl team. They wanted to know what the most challenging part of your working day is. So you've talked about challenges in your career, but on your day-to-day work, what's the most challenging part of your day?
Most challenging part of my day is covering everything. So Deep Space Logistics team is a small but mighty team, and we have lots and lots of meetings, and we talk about all different kinds of things. And so switching between, okay, now I'm going to talk about a space toilet. And my next meeting, I'm going to talk about where we put handrails in the space station. And then we're going to talk about, my next meeting is going to be, okay, how do we get this to the right orbit? And what, who are we going to need to get on our team, or things like that. And so just that mental switch through the day and making it to all the meetings is probably the most challenging part.
And that's presumably quite exciting as well, though. It's a variety in your job.
It is. And then also, I mentioned working with the international partners, trying to schedule a meeting with the Japanese and, an astronaut working in Germany is always a challenge. And so you try and find the best times of day, which aren't always the best times of day for you.
No, indeed. Another question, a bit of a fun one really, but if you had to have 3 fancy dinner party guests, who would they be and why? Who would be the people you'd want there?
The first one would be Jim Lovell. He's another astronaut. He's Gemini and Apollo astronaut. I've met him once. He's truly incredible. And I think I'd love to be able to talk to him more about his experiences. His crew, actually, going back to the school memories, there was an Apollo 8 Earthrise photo in the senior school, just down one of the hallways, and I always used to walk past that picture, and it was one of my favorite things to do, just to remind me, okay, this is what we're doing, this is the goal, and this was what I really love. And so last year, when Orion went past the moon and took a very similar picture, I thought that was really amazing. But cameras have come a long way, and the detail that we got was just incredible. But yeah, so talking to Jim Lovell about going to the moon, that would be really neat. What do you think? Lewis Hamilton would probably be my second one. I'm a big Formula One fan. I think if I hadn't gone into aerospace, I think race cars might have been my second love. It's really like an upside down airplane. You know, the aerodynamics are very similar. It's just keeping it on the road instead of keeping it in the ground, in the air. Goodness. So I think that would be pretty neat. And then let's see, third one. I should probably say somebody, you know, like a powerful woman like Margaret Thatcher, or I don't know. But I think the other one I think would be maybe my grandfather. He was an engineer for the Royal Air Force. And I know my dad's told me some of his stories, but just to be able to sit and chat with him about the things that he did, I think that's where my love of engineering comes from, is from him. So I think that would be a pretty good dinner gift.
You touched a little bit on, if you hadn't gone into aerospace, what you would have done. Did you have other careers in mind if it didn't, you know, that was very much you were set on doing that?
There was never any other choice. Right. That was always what I wanted to do. It wasn't a case of what I want to do, of how I was going to do it. So it was, do I want to do a degree in space science? Okay, what would I do with that? No, I really want to do engineering. And so every time I thought, well, maybe I'll do something different, I just came back to that, and it was always what I wanted to do.
Awesome. So what advice would you give to the students that are listening who, you know, in terms of your career, but also, you know, just in general about how they get, you know, reach their dreams? You were so set on doing that and you've got there. What advice would you give to students about how they get set about getting into aerospace engineering, or just, you know, their careers in general?
I think the biggest thing would be, like we said before, find something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you can really dig your teeth into, and look into what it takes to get there. You know, you're always, I think, looking for an example of people to follow, and that I certainly did. I looked at the astronauts and saw what they did and what their careers were, and it led me to where I am today. And then I think just following what you think is right. You know, be true to yourself, and really look inside yourself and see what makes you happy and what you enjoy doing.
You talked earlier about maths, and you joked that some teachers would say your maths need is better. Were you particularly strong in certain subjects though at school? Was it obvious you would go into that career?
I think for me, physics and chemistry were probably my favorites. So again, I did better at those than I did at maybe history or any other subjects. Math was one of those things that you know, everybody says, oh, you have to be really brilliant at math. And having taken as many college courses, university courses as I have now in math, I think I got there eventually, but it was definitely a struggle for me. So even though it wasn't easy, making the choice to commit to it and getting through it at first, and then really getting better at it, helped me. But knowing that there was areas I had to work on definitely gave me that push to, okay, let's do more of this.
Yeah. And what's next, Susie? What's for the future career-wise? Have you got any great plans, or you've got obviously lots going on at the moment? Anything for the future?
I think every time the astronaut application opens up, I'm going to put in for that. Haven't been successful yet, but there's still time, still hope.
So you'll keep applying for that, do you?
I do, yeah. And then really, I think, looking at the programs that we're doing now, I just moved into this mission integration engineering role, and before that I did something a little bit different but on the same program, because I really like what we're doing and like the people I'm working with, and I think that's important. And yeah, we'll just see where it goes from here.
Oh, please keep in touch about the astronaut side of things and let us know, and we all wish you the best of luck in one day that being successful. I've come to the end of all my questions. Is there anything left, Susie, you'd like to say as your sort of parting words?
I would just thank you for the opportunity to talk to everybody today. I think it's a really great opportunity, and one I certainly wouldn't have expected. So thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody that's listening. And I think, trying to think of my favorite things, but we talked about the people a lot. Yeah. And one of the things that I keep on my desk actually is a picture that my friends gave me when I was leaving Nottingham, and so I still have that on my desk. and we talked about friends and keeping in touch. And, you know, I would really encourage anybody listening to keep in touch with the friends that you make. And you might think now that, oh, I'll never not keep in touch with these people, but it takes work, and it's not always the easiest thing, especially when you move across an ocean. And so yeah,
it's lovely to hear that you still have that memory that you keep with you. I think that's so wonderful, so lovely. And you're right, friendships take a lot more work when you leave school, but it's worth it, isn't it?
It is. And I've also realized that my mum was a hoarder, because the other day she found my school blazer. So I don't know what we're going to do with that ever, but
keep it forever.
This is a wardrobe.
Well, you say about thank you for our time, but thank you so much for giving up your time to speak to us today. You are an inspiration, one of the most incredible alumni that we've ever had the joy of speaking, and we will watch your career with excitement and interest. And please do keep in touch. And I know you don't come back very often, but whenever you're in Nottingham, you're always welcome here. So we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Susie. Bye-bye. Thank you all for listening.
Bye-bye.